All right, so I'm here with Mr. Ken Brown. He is a colleague of mine at Washington Marion, and he teaches our law studies classes, but he's also literally written the law in regard to suicide prevention and the actions that schools need to take in the state of Louisiana. So I just wanted to meet with him today and ask him a couple questions on what he sees as challenges regarding suicide prevention, because he's the expert, at least here. Mr. Ken Brown, the question that I had for you is, our textbooks that we're reading talk about how suicide among gifted students, you would think that they're either higher because of all the stress or lower because they've got so much going for them. What would you say? Would you say either of those are accurate, or are both of them inaccurate?
I would say that from my understanding, the gifted population, their minds work in a different way. It's not that they're more intelligent, it's that they actually think differently.
Right.
They experience the world differently. And one of the ways I've had that explained to me is that gifted kids on an emotional level, so they're not just gifted intellectually, they can also be gifted emotionally.
Right.
And that they experience the world in HD.
Okay.
Compared to the rest of us.
Right. That's a really interesting way to put it.
So it's more vivid to them. Mm-hmm. So that means their highs can be higher and their lows can be lower.
Right.
If they're gifted in that. And remember, you can be gifted in different areas.
Right.
But if that is their giftedness, then you can have gifted students be more at risk for suicidal or self-harm behavior because of that.
Okay.
So
that's really interesting. So here at Washington Marion, our population, I would say we probably have a lot of hidden gifted kids who don't realize it, but on paper at least, it would be hard to say that we have a lot of traditionally described as gifted students. Would you say that that we have more or less of a risk here? Do you think there's some myths that might need to be dispelled regarding our particular population here and risk of suicide?
So speaking of what you just said, as far as if you look at the number of gifted students, yes, it's probably low. Mm-hmm. And that's why in our parish we actually have a disproportionality committee, because there are a disproportionate number of students in the African American community that are labeled special ed as opposed to gifted.
Right. Okay.
And so there's actually a program in our parish that's working on that exact issue.
Wow.
And so there are, the REACH program goes out into elementary schools and tests, especially in the urban areas, tries to identify those kids that might otherwise be lost.
Wow.
And they put them together in certain REACH classes to try to funnel them into the gifted program. So
That's
there
great.
are steps being made towards that. But as of now, once you're at the high school level, and they haven't been identified yet, if you're looking at our student population here, it is a myth that the African American population is not as susceptible to suicidal ideation or behavior as others. Unfortunately, just last week, we had an African American female die by suicide on the McNeese College campus.
Right, I heard about that.
So, the rate in that population is actually increasing. So, at our school, I would say a couple of things. One, there's a stigma always associated with suicide and mental illness.
Right.
And that stigma might be even higher in this community.
I would think you're right.
As far as saying, I have a mental illness, I need help, or even talking about suicide or mental illness. So that's a challenge as far as identifying the students that might need help, or even the number of students that are at risk. Right. I think that works against us.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. It's been very interesting and very enlightening. I appreciate you taking the time to talk about it.
Absolutely. That's what I do. Thanks.
Great. No problem.